Hello everyone, my name is Ashley and welcome to episode 2 of the Shivers and Screams podcast. In this episode we're going to be talking about creepypastas. If you're liking the podcast and want to see more, then be sure to like the podcast, guys. Really helps it get out there. And yeah, subscribe to my channel and turn post notifications so you never miss on my posts. Without further ado, let's start episode 2 of the Shivers and Screams podcast. This is creepypasta. They put up a tall fence covered with black tarp and topped by barbed wire, surrounding Lake Colette at the centre of Juniper Valley so that no one could see what they were doing. 2 of the 3 local cop cars were stationed 24/7 at either end, one to the east and one to the west. This all went on for 3 days while some unknown official body did what needed to be done. Then, overnight, the black barbed wire fence was gone, replaced with one of the normal chain-linked variety. A few middle school kids dared Kevin Witter to apply a pair of wire cutters and sneak in. My little half-brother knew Kevin. The kid claimed to have seen unmarked vans and a bevy of sunglass-wearing government agents with automatic weapons, surrounding a team of scientists in hazmat suits, dragging the carcass of a monster out of the water. The monster had 10 legs, the skin of an alligator, and the body of a squid, or the body of a shark, or matted fur, or feathers, or teeth. It changed per telling, and it was all bullshit. I'm guessing Kevin Witter either chickened out before doing a deed, or else was picked up by the cops as soon as he approached the fence. At the end of the 3 days, some early risers in Juniper Valley reported witnessing unmarked cars heading east on Skylark Road towards the highway and the Air Force Base and the Palmdale Airport. Whether the government agency was operating behind the blockage, searching the lake, they were gone without a trace by the time the sun was up. And whatever they found, they weren't telling. The cops were clueless. All they told us townsfolk was that due to a bacterial infestation, we were not to swim in the lake until further notice. I will never swim in the lake again, and I hope to God they killed them. I stayed in Juniper Valley during the summer with my father. He and my stepmother loved it there, loved the isolation and the small town lifestyle. Though I would hesitate to even call Juniper Valley a town, it's an unincorporated cluster of ranch-style homes planted like the Pimple and Monster Sierra Pelona Mountains. In the 90s, the population of Juniper Valley and the surrounding hills was 800 and change. There was one general store in town, one gas station, one church, and one dirty little inn with a bar/restaurant. Anything else one might need could be found in Palmdale, a 45-minute drive east, through miles of gridded power lines and golden flatland dotted with silos and scrap metal. The town resembles a bowl with Lake Colette at the basin and streets and houses arranged around the edges, along the slopes of the surrounding hills. Carlin Lake Colette, a lake, is also stretching things a little bit. It's a sag pond right on the San Andreas Fault, which cuts straight through Juniper Valley. During droughts, Lake Colette would drain to a glorified puddle, a mossy marsh of waist high weeds. I look out my bedroom window at the lake below the dim circles of light cast by the 2 street lamps on the Skylark Park Road, pitch black like a tar pit. On moonless nights it seemed depthless, and I felt as though it could be a kilometres deep well. A black hole. It could suck me in, swallow me whole. I grew up. My mom's in Juniper Valley became skull-crushingly boring. My dad and stepmother worked, my half-siblings went to summer school, and my friends were 70 miles away. It was my step-grandmother who told me about the Will Fell Animal Sanctuary. She went to church with the lady who ran the place, a retired park ranger named Kathy. The shelter was a non-profit funded solely by donations, with an all-volunteer staff. Kathy owned an acre of hillside land off Skylark Road, just west of town, a 15-minute walk from my father's house. I was 13 the first summer I volunteered at the Willfell, and I went back every summer after. They loved me there. By they, I mean the only two staff members, Kathy, an earthly woman in her 60s, who functioned as a CEO, manager, accountant, and primary caretaker of the animals. And Jax, a 27-year-old autistic man who cleaned cages and walked dogs as part of the government subsidised program. And I fell in love with the animals. There were about 60 of them, homeless dogs and unwanted cats. There were two huge kennels in Kathy's large backyard. One for dogs, one for cats, further back rabbit hutches, and at the far end against the sturdy fence, a tiny stable that housed an elderly racehorse and a fat little donkey. When pounds in Palmdale and Lancaster received animals they had no room for, they'd give them to Kathy. She'd drive her rickety old windowless van east to the highway, then come back hours later with new furry charges. Sometimes she'd function as a poor man's dog catcher. Agencies would direct her towards residences from Juniper Valley to Acton, asking her to remove starving, nearly hairless dogs from gardens and pull emaciated cats out from under cars. These were the highway strays, abandoned on the 14 by individuals who no longer wished to be pet owners. But that first summer I meet Jane Kittornes. Jane was a friend of Kathy's, a retired Navy nurse who worked as an at-home caregiver and took in homeless cats. She visited Willfell at least once a week, sometimes bringing large bags of cat food. Jane was a rough lady, tan, sinewy, wrinkled, beyond her years, only ever seen wearing stained wife beaters and baggy fatigues. She never married and no family I knew of, and seemed to prefer the company of cats to humans. Kathy considered her an asset. She'd taken 20 cats at a time, accepting responsibility when we had no more room. She owned a cat a half acre a few miles southwest of the town, off a shabby 2-lane road called Oak Tree Lane. Oak Tree Lane snaked between grey-green hills before ending deep in the Angeles National Forest. Rusting mailboxes stick out of the ground like flags at the head of dirt roads, leading to remote ranches and groves and campgrounds. Jane's cottage was at the end of one of these dirt roads in a little clearing carpeted with knee-high weeds and prickly shrubs, surrounded on 3 sides by gently sloping hills. She'd take me there, sometimes. There were always cats everywhere. Cats inside and out, cats on the sofa, cats sitting atop Jane's washer, cats sunning themselves, stalking field mice and butterflies, sleeping and fighting and screwing. I spent hours at Jane's house with her cats, helping her clean up and clean little litter boxes, cuddling kittens from the occasional litter. Jane liked me. Since she obviously felt a little need for her human companionship, I took this as the highest of compliments. Every summer on the first day I'd see her, Jane would break out into the biggest, brightest smile that Kathy swore she reserved only for me. "You're like me, Marlena," Jane would say as I stared out the window of her 1979 El Camino. "You can cut right through anyone's bullshit and see their soul. That's why you love animals so much. Your standards for souls are higher than most." The earthquake hit the winter of my junior year. I remember walking in the middle of the night, roused by the thud of my precariously placed math book falling off my desk. The mild shaking lasted about 3.5 seconds. Then I realised I'd experienced an earthquake, rolled over and fell back to sleep. My dad, his family in Juniper Valley were hit a bit harder. Positioned on San Andreas Fault and close to the epicentre, structural damage was rather extensive. And as the area was experiencing a rainy winter, rocky mudslides, closed roads and isolated remote dwellings, the mess had been cleaned up by summer, but I noticed broken sandbag barricades and new violent cracks along the Skylark Road. Lake Colette looked more robust than I'd ever seen it, but was surrounded by a chain-link fence. The water had taken on a greenish tinge and hosted islands of thick, yellowish scum. For now it was closed to the public. I returned to Kathy and the Willfell Animal Sanctuary with a driver's license this time, which secured me a new responsibility. Kathy's windowless fan still hadn't broken down, but she was sick of driving it all over the valley. So she handed me the keys. I enjoyed it at first, rambling through Golden Plains until I saw the boxy developments of Palmdale or Lancaster. rescuing filthy, unloved creatures from the clutches of abusive owners or uncaring bureaucracy. Jane Clitoris had all but disappeared. Her last nurse in charge had passed away and she was rarely seen in town, only at the general store, Kathy told me, and rarely, I think Kathy and I were the only people in Juniper Valley who noticed her absence. I missed Jane. I missed the way her face lit up when she saw me and warm summer afternoons spent in her backyard. I called her landline once, it had been disconnected. Soon the cat started appearing. My third day back, I was sitting in Kathy's office when I received a phone call from a talkative old lady in town. There was a cat in her backyard. It had been sitting in the lower branches of her oak tree for hours. I think it's someone's pet, she said. It's too chubby to be a stray. This in and of itself was not an extraordinary event. Everyone in town knew Kathy ran a shelter and would infrequently call her in lieu of animal control when an unknown animal became a bother. Sometimes said animal would be a neighbour's lost pet, other times a runaway that had wandered from Palmdale. Kathy always made an effort to find her owner. Rarely a feral, abandoned highway stray would make it to Juniper Valley. These poor creatures were always half-dead things with matted fur and exposed pustule-dotted skin. They usually had to be euthanized or die before the local vet got a chance. At first, I assumed the calm, well-groomed grey and white short hair I found in the old lady's oak tree was the former Townsend escaped house cat. I tried to coax the fin down with a can of tuna. No dice. It wasn't remotely interested in the food. It just stared back, black, depthless eyes locked on something that wasn't me. I stood, tuna can in my outstretched hand, looked like an idiot for 5 frustrating minutes before giving up and going to the van to grab Kathy's net. When I got back, the cat was gone. I never saw it again. It bothered me all night. It was like the cat had been messing with me. And it happened again and again. Homeowner after Juniper Valley homeowner calling Willfell and asking us to remove a cat from their property. Always cats, always different cats. I don't think I ever saw the same one twice. The homeowner always insisted he or she had never seen an animal before. And they never had collars. They always appeared well fed, if not then overfed. Their fur, though not show quality, was thick and intact. It became troubling. Juniper Valley had a population of 842. It was located 45 minutes from the nearest town and surrounded on the 3 sides by the hills and forest. And these cats were not like any cats I'd ever seen before. They're like freshwater. I'd find them sitting in fountains and kiddie pools. They didn't seem to like the sun. They'd come out at night or else be found in some shaded, dark, enclosed space. They were silent, never hissing or meowing. They were smart, supernaturally smart. At times I felt under the disturbing impression the cat was taunting me. I would set up some trap or extend the net. The cat would sit there, calm and cool, watching intently. There'd be a minute in which I'd have some semblance of hope. I'd finally catch the fin this time and then the cat would dart out of my grasp or vanish the moment I turned my back. Finally I caught one. It was early July. I was quite pleased with my cunning. I bought one of those huge plastic storage tubs from a general store, filled it with water and stuck it in the back of the van, and waited for my feline quarry, a large pug-faced tabby this time. After an hour hiding in the cab, the cat climbed down from the roof where I'd found it and into the waiting reservoir. I raced to the back, slammed the van doors, donned leather gloves and prepared for hissing, clawing fight. But surprisingly, the cat didn't struggle at all. It was fully submerged in the water, curled up on the bottom of the container like a rock. It wasn't until I was halfway to Willfell that I noticed the smell. Once my 9-year-old son dropped a fish stick in the back of my car and forgot about it. A humid summer week later, my car smelled just like that cat had. When we got there, the chubby tabby put up about as much of a fight as it had in the van. I didn't hold it for long. Years of experience with scared animals taught me that the less time spent with claws inches from my face, the better. But a short span of time the cat was in my hands was enough to make me seriously uncomfortable. I left the cat in the quarantine cage in Kathy's office. We usually only use the cage for animals that were obviously ill, which the tabby was not. But there was just something wrong with this cat. Like it shouldn't be mixed with others of its species. I gave it bowls of kibble and water, then sat down at the desk to fill out an application for a grant. Kathy was gone for the weekend, visiting her sister in Bakersfield. Jax was in the back, cleaning out the pony stall. I looked over my shoulder. Every other minute, each time I'd see the same thing, the flat-faced tabby sitting in its water bowl, staring at me. It never blinked, it never moved, it didn't even appear to breathe. The rotting, fishy odour filled the room. Finally, I cracked. I double-checked the latch on the cat's cage, locked the office door, and pretended to be busy feeding the dogs. I called the vet and asked if he could come by and take a look at the feline, but he said he wouldn't be able for another week. Next morning, I found the office window wide open, the quarantine cage open, and the cat gone. I wasn't disappointed. Not long after that, everyone started talking about little Charlie Henderson. Charlie was 12 and had been skateboarding alone shortly before midnight in the parking lot by Lake Colette. The lake was still scum covered and fenced off, and the occupants of the nearest homes had long since packed in for the night. The way he told it, Charlie had been approached by a cat. He bent over to pet it, and then the cat danced away, leading him to a grove of trees behind the lake. He followed the cat, then suddenly he was attacked by a small army of cats. They jumped from the trees and emerged from the shadows, latching onto his clothing and limbs, and dragged him towards a hole in the fence. If a lost car hadn't pulled into the parking lot and turned around, causing the cat to scatter and giving him time to run away, well, who knows what they'd have done with him. No one believed him, of course. Everyone assumed he'd been attacked by maybe one feral cat and his imagination had taken over. Because cats don't corner people and jump them. That takes organisation and planning, intelligence not possessed by house pets. He claimed one of his cats had stretched itself like silly putty and grew an opposable thumb. Then Jane came back. It was a cloudy afternoon when I was taking advantage of the slight cool down to deep clean the dog kennel. Kathy was gone again in Riverside watching her granddaughter play softball. I was busy scraping dry dog crap off the concrete when Jax ran out to tell me there was a lady asking for me. I wiped off my hands and went inside to find Jane Kiltorne staring at me from Kathy's living room. Jane had never been fastidious about her appearance. If I hadn't known her so well, I would have assumed the gaunt, trembling figure in a stained wife beater was a homeless woman. Her hair was a frizzy, matted mess of grey. She looked unwashed. Her arms and chest were striped with lacerations of varying degree of depths in various stages of healing, and her eyes, which had once seemed to serve as a window to a rational, calculating mind, now allowed a glimpse into bloodshot insanity. "Jane!" I said. What? Are you okay?" She didn't smile. "Do you have any?" she asked. "I found any what?" "Cats, Marlena," was the curt reply. "It's the cats. I needed cats. They've been wandering." I gave her what I hoped was a kind smile. "Okay, Jane, I can show you the cats, but Kathy said I'm not allowed to have any of them adopted without her around." That was a lie, of course, but I wasn't about to pass Jane custody of a pet rock, let alone a living, breathing creature. She was obviously not in the physical, emotional, or mental state to care for anything, not even herself. I walked her out to the cat kennel. As expected, a small herd of dogs ran towards Jane to sniff her and beg for attention. Then about 3 feet from her, the dogs stopped. They sniffed the air, whined and lopped off in all directions. Not a single one got any nearer. Jane looked over the cat seriously, then sighed in disappointment. She shook her head, turned around and paced back to Kathy's house. "You haven't caught any," she said. "What are you talking about?" I asked. She glared, looking through me. She could cut through anyone's bullshit and see their soul. "You know what I mean, Marlena. My cats. Call me if you catch one. There's so many of them now. And they're getting bigger." With that, she walked out the door. She stopped. She turned around. And Marlena watched the lake. I spent the rest of the day in the daze. I've been wondering where the weird cats came from. They didn't belong to anyone in Juniper Valley, and it was hard to believe that they'd all migrated from Palmdale. Jane took in homeless cats. Maybe they were hers. I didn't know why they would have left food, water and shelter to wander for miles along an isolated road and into a neighbourhood, but it was at least a possibility. That night followed a tangible motivation I couldn't put into words. I borrowed my father's car and drove to the parking lot by Lake Colette, where Charlie Henderson had been attacked. I pulled right up to the fence, turned off my car, let my eyes adjust to the darkness. I obeyed Jane. I watched the lake. I hadn't sat for 10 minutes before I saw movement, a black shape creeping out of the shadows and approaching the water's edge. More movement. There's a clump of trees to my right. Cautiously, quietly, I opened the car door and stepped out. I shut the door gently and tiptoed towards the fence. A large black cat waded in the dirty lake. Its paws were inundated. It kept on going. I came closer until I was grasping the metal links of the fence. I felt a quiver under my fingers. I looked to my right and saw them. 2 more cats. Huge cats, the biggest I'd ever seen. Cats climbed down the fence like monkeys, head first, completely vertical. One, then the other, jumped gracefully to the ground and stepped in the feeble light bleeding from the 2 street lights. One was yellow, the other a tabby. The first cat was almost completely submerged with the lightest gurgle. It ducked under the scum-covered waterline into a black hole, the toothed tar pit. The light wasn't good at all. It looked as though the second and third cats had flattened when they hit the ground, like Play-Doh thrown at a wall. And there was something about how they moved. They jiggled, their legs bent the wrong way, or maybe it was just the shitty lighting. I was scared of Lake Colette, scared like I had been as a child when the black water had seemed from my bedroom window a depthless well. I ran to the car. I did a donut in the parking lot and sped home. The next morning was hot and bright, and under the cloudless sky, it all seemed ridiculous. I walked past Lake Colette on my way to Willfell. I went right up to the fence. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. No cats in sight. A light breeze ruffled the water. I breathed in and gagged. It smelled like rotten fish mixed with a McDonald's dumpster. It smelled like the pug-faced tabby I'd caught. Cats don't like water. Cats don't swim. I'd spent nearly half a decade surrounded by cats, and the cats I'd been chasing around yards and spying on the night before weren't cats. That smell, the way the tabby I'd caught had felt when I held it, bloated and putty-like, cold. Those cats didn't purr or meow. They didn't eat. They didn't poop. Their intelligence and that stared, those glassy corpse-like eyes that seemed to take everything and nothing. I had to talk to Jane again. Traffic was still gone and it was Jack's day off, so I planned on heading to Jane's lonely dirt road. As soon as I fed the animals, it was still light out. I locked up, grabbed the keys to the van and made my way to the hills. Finally, I came to the rusty blue mailbox with Jane's number on the side. I turned on the dirt road. The van jerked finally as I climbed up the hill. When I reached the apex, I saw Jane's shack, carefully foot on the brake. I made my way down into the valley. It didn't look like Jane was home. There was no light coming from the windows. I pulled up closer into the driveway, past the house, to the carport in the back. The back door was wide open and Jane's El Camino was there. I pulled beside Jane's car, climbed up the van, strolled into the backyard. Jane's empty property looked lovely in the approaching dusk. Tall grass around my gentle golden hills, spinally naked trees reaching for the heavens, majestic firs, mean fluffy white clouds like an old West movie backdrop. She must have been hiding in the house. She must have crept up behind me, but I don't remember feeling the blow. I woke up lying in the cool, moist dirt. I was looking at water, Lake Colette. No, I saw nothing but hills and foliage in the distance. Where the fuck was I? I sat up, my head spun. I felt blood in my hair. I was sitting on the bank of a small pond. The water was greenish and thick with algae, covered in thick yellow scum. I took a breath and lurched. The smell of rotten fish, rotten flesh. Fast food dumpster, stronger than I'd ever smelled before. The water moved. Someone was emerging a few feet in the front of me. Swimming to shore, a black cat paddling with uncomfortable, almost human strokes. I scrambled backwards away from the approaching creature. It reached land. It pulled itself onto the bank. It stood up. Anyone who grew up watching Looney Tunes knows what a cat in theory looks like standing on 2 feet. There was nothing like that. The black cat's weight shifted. Its belly bulged. Its lower legs swelled, became shorter and fatter. The effect was the same as squeezing a stress ball. Instead of a creature with a skeleton and tendons and muscles, I was being approached by a fin with the consistency of jelly wearing a furry suit. I screamed! I stumbled to my feet, then I felt itchy fingers curled around my neck. I struggled and instinctively force-kicked my unseen attacker. The hand loosened and I whirled around. I was face to face with Jane Quitornes, but it wasn't Jane. Her face was round and flat, boneless. The wrinkles under her eyes and smoothed themselves out, and her nose bulged like a mushroom, and her eyes. The maniacal glint was gone from her eyes, so was the consciousness, so was the recognition, so was the vitality. Her pupils were so dilated, her irises were no longer visible, and what had been white was now completely red. Her eyes didn't move. They were those of a corpse. A wobbling arm extended, and I was falling backwards, back towards the pond, towards the demented anthropomorphic cat. I turned my body and caught myself as I slid my left arm plunging into the murky water. A cold weight on my shoulder, knocking me backwards. Then a cat fin was sitting on my chest. It held out a paw and stepped on one foreleg with the other. Its paw bulged and reshaped itself. Its toes grew fatter, skin stretching, and a small nub popped out of the side, an opposable thumb like putty in a rubber glove. Then something in the water grabbed my hand, something soft and cold and rubber-like, slimy but very, very strong. It pulled me. It's pulling me into the water. Then something else jerked at my hair. Jane stood over me, smiling. She bent down, hands outstretched, pudgy, blurred hands attached to rope-like arms that jiggled and curled and changed shape. What happened next is a blur. I remember clawing, clicking, screaming at the top of my lungs, and then I was running, stumbling, lungs burning, stinging, aching, cursing the spongy, weeded ground that lay under my feet. I pushed through dry shrubs and jumped over tree branches, praying I was going in a direction that would lead me to humanity, and that twinkling of grass behind me was only my imagination. Then I was on top of a hill, looking down at Jane's shack, and then I was in Jane's yard. I saw the van and lunged for it, threw myself into the driver's seat, silently thanking the spirit of the guardian angel that distracted me, so I'd left the keys in the ignition. I slammed the door. I looked up out the windshield and into the red and black empty eyes of the thing that had been Jane. It was smiling. She'd always reserved a special smile for me. I turned the key. I gunned it. Squelch! Squelch! The van jerked finally. I slammed on the brakes, kicking up dirt like smoke. I felt sticky moisture against my cheeks. I took a breath and barely managed to pull open the door before I projectile vomited. Even thinking about acidic, rotting seafood stench induced a nauseous tickle in the back of my throat. I crushed Jane under the front right tyre. I'd popped her. God must have been smiling down on me that night because the van still ran. I drove it straight to the police station. In the parking lot, I surveyed damage. The front bumper was dented and the headlight was out. There was no blood. The mangled metal was splattered with glossy, opaque white glue. Over the next week, I was questioned multiple times by the police. Their questions became increasingly bizarre to the point where they were asking about toxic chemicals and lights in the sky. Seriously? And whether I was or had ever been involved with a heavy metal band and or a witch cult. This was the late 90s. I was chastisemmed for driving down a lonely back road alone to approach a crazy woman, but I was never charged with a crime. The cops were cagey, but they found something. By next morning, Oak Tree Lane was blocked off by county sheriffs, and the inhabitants of the hills had been roughly evacuated with no explanation. Then came more sheriffs, then the unmarked cars, then the tall black barbed wire fence around Lake Collet. Jane's death was reported as a freak accident. Okay, guys, and that is the end of this episode of the podcast. That was a long one, though, wasn't it, guys? We've been recording for half hour. It says here estimated reading time 23 minutes, but we've been doing for half hour. Okay, guys, this has been The Cats of Juniper Valley. I found this story on creepypasta.com. So if you want to read scary stories yourself, then go to creepypasta.com and you'll find a whole bunch there. So guys, that is the end of episode 2 of the Shivers and Screams podcast. I really hope that you enjoyed this podcast, guys, this episode. If you did, then please give it a like and share the video, guys, and subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss on our post. I'll see you next time. And until then, sweet dreams. Bye!